Ashton, how are you doing today, sir?
Fantastic. The weather cooling off here in South Georgia, finally. It feels like fall. Football's been here for a couple of weeks, but now it feels like it. Yeah, it's just a different feel. You know how like when it just kind of you can get it in the air a little bit. You just kind of have a sense of it when you walk out the door in the morning. So yeah, it's hey, we had another really good college football week. Even though some people would have said that, not going to be a fantastic week. I really enjoyed this past week. I thought there was a lot of really interesting games.
Yeah, you got to go to one of those games, and let's talk about that one. Tell
Oh
me
yeah.
about your experience. Obviously, well, okay, not obvious for those who weren't listening last week, but last week you told us you're going to the Florida-Tennessee game.
Right.
Florida beats Tennessee. They upset them 29-16. Tennessee, one of only two top 25 schools to lose in this last week. Not really all that close, pretty much from the beginning. At least that's what I was seeing from TV land. What were you seeing in the stadium at the Swamp there?
Yeah, it was, hey, Florida was impressive, man. Like I think I said it maybe even in the preseason. Florida in their first three games, they have a road trip to Utah and then they have a home game against Tennessee. And if you can somehow get a split out of those two, it doesn't we don't really care which one it is, but if you somehow win one of those two games, Tennessee or Utah, then you really set yourself up for they have a little chunk here that is gettable for
Mhm.
Florida. They have a chance for success. They were impressive Saturday night. By the way, this was my first trip to the Swamp there in Gainesville. Yeah, for a night game, it was electric. It was really fun, really cool atmosphere there. It was loud, like it was surprisingly. I wasn't. Yeah, I didn't know what to expect. I guess so. Tennessee looked rattled, and I think you kind of understand how much impact like a home crowd has. Like there was a lot of false starts, a lot of miscommunications.
Mhm.
Tennessee called two timeouts on their first drive of the second half when they're driving. Tennessee, it was because they were running out of play clock, but they're known for their tempo, right? Like Tennessee wants to get out there and go, and like they want to have tempo, and like it just got taken away. Like they had no tempo, no rhythm on offense the entire time. Like they never even found it, not once. So I was impressed. Yeah, dominant win from Florida. They looked good. They ran the ball well. Can we give a little bit of love to Graham Mertz? We've made fun of him, and it was a previous life for him, right? Like that was Big Ten Graham Mertz back at Wisconsin. He was good on Saturday. He made smart plays. He was accurate on third down. I thought he was really good. Made a couple of plays with his feet too. So yeah, I was impressed with Florida. I mean, they have tough games. I mean, Georgia's still on the schedule. Florida State's still on the schedule. Those guys, LSU too. Those guys don't go away. But like this was one of them, right? Like Tennessee's one of those big games, and you won that. So yeah, I was impressed with Florida. Obviously, um, on the Tennessee side, I don't know. I don't have much. Like that. That was a tough loss. That's a game you really needed. They haven't won in the Swamp. Tennessee hasn't won in the Swamp in like 20 years, is what I found out. I did not know that. It
Yeah.
was, yeah, like 2002 or 2001. Um, Crazy. Yeah, just a crazy stat. So I I mean they have to go soul searching right now. Like that was a game they had to have.
Yeah, and you've been like particularly on the just feed ETN train. Like you've been all over that.
Yeah.
And they finally like it seemed like they did. They gave him the ball a lot and he was very productive. You talked about Mertz a little bit. I didn't think he was all that great, but he managed the game very well. And it's so often at Wisconsin it was boom or bust for him. And he doesn't have to be an awesome quarterback for Florida to have a solid season. He just has to
Right.
be solid, make a few good plays, take what the defense gives you, like all those coaching cliches that fans hate to hear, but like it's real. Like just manage the game. Honestly, just be a game manager. No quarterback wants to hear that, but he played like that. He was a game manager. And Joe Milton, on the other hand,
Hmm.
a little rough going. I don't know that I I was never on the Joe Milton like for Heisman bandwagon. Neither one of us was.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I
Right.
think I expected him to be a little better in that offense at this point of the season.
It's fair. I mean, you see him go out and throw a ball 90 yards, which by the way, I came there early for the warm-ups. I was like, I just want to see Joe Milton try to chuck a ball like from one end zone to the other. Like that's all I'm here for. And he didn't really. I was kind of disappointed by it, but I mean, he's got a fantastic deep ball, right? And you see it multiple times, even in a game which he did not play well. He still threw a couple of just perfect deep balls.
Mm-hmm.
It just there was no rhythm, and with Mertz, he was. I mean, Mertz to me was the better quarterback. I know his stats weren't even close to Milton as far as total yards, but Mertz just didn't throw in completions. Like he was really good on third down, whereas Milton was not. Joe Milton was not very good, especially he wasn't really good with his feet. Didn't run the ball much, and he never made the throw running out of the pocket, like scrambling. Like he just didn't seem to have that. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know where you go. Like the Nico chance may start for Tennessee. Like the Nico, the 5-star freshman quarterback who they just have sitting on the bench right now. Like if I'm a Tennessee fan, I'd kind of be okay with seeing him. Like maybe we just give him a drive and in mop up duty somewhere, or drive or 2 or 3, and kind of see where it goes. I mean, yeah, I would kind of be a fan of that.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see for sure. Well, we should probably move on to the rest of week 3. Not a whole lot else to talk about, like as far as like a lot of big games, but there was a lot of football being played, some interesting results. We have a lot to talk about with week 4 coming up, so I don't know that we'll spend just a ton of time recapping week 3, but let's kind of run through it. Louisville beat Indiana 21-14. It was 21-0 at halftime, and Indiana they have a good defensive front. I'm not sure about anything else, but yeah. LSU beats Mississippi State 41-14, just kind of a walloping from the beginning. One thing I will say is I'm a little worried that Will Arnett is Will Muschamp, like just the defensive coordinator who wants to run the ball, and that's about it. You got 5 seconds on that before we move on?
No, let's just let it see. Let's just let it soak a little bit. Like let's give Arnett just a little bit more time. I can't hate on the defensive coordinators all the time. Like sometimes it does work out for him. So no, I did see a bit of that game, and yeah, it was concerning. The offense was really not good. Like it was not good at all for Mississippi State.
Florida State really struggled with Boston College, finally winning 31-29. Just a week ago, we were on this podcast, me specifically saying that Boston College is terrible. I took Florida State to cover in this game. Now, obviously, they have the look-ahead spot with Clemson, but there's no way you should beat Boston College this season by only 2 points. And Ashton, I just have one question, and this relates not only to Florida State, but to a lot of other results we've seen this year. Is anyone good?
I've heard a lot of people say that, especially following this past Saturday. Is like let's just let it soak. Let's let the season bake, and let's see what comes out on the other end. There's a lot of teams with talent, and we can talk about Florida State, who played down to their competition this past week. They did, but we saw them against LSU week 1, and they were excellent. We're going to see them going on the road to Clemson, which is going to be that's Clemson's Super Bowl. It really is. Clemson has to have this game if they want to have a good season. Like, let's see how Florida State reacts to that environment. Like, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of teams out there. I don't know if you've seen Washington yet.
Yes.
My goodness, Washington is a playoff team. Like, you're going to have to convince me otherwise. Like, the Huskies look really, really good. Texas, obvious letdown game for them. They didn't look good against Wyoming. There's a lot of teams out there I'm willing to see. Notre Dame, your team, by the way, looks quite good through. Well, yeah, they're 4-0. It's only week 3, but they did play in week 0. They've got some big games coming up. We'll talk about that more in a few minutes. But this was big. Like that's a good win. Like they've stacked some good wins on top of each other. Yeah, there's a lot of talented teams out there that are still growing into themselves. So that's my stance, right?
Yeah, obviously a hyperbolic question. There are some teams that are good. But yeah, I have been amazed at how many teams have shown a little tendency to play down to the competition from time to time.
Right.
One team that was pretty good Saturday is Penn State. Tough game against Illinois, because Illinois always will just do that, and they have a good defense, especially the interior defensive line. Penn State wins 30-13. Not a whole lot else on that one. Solid. Yeah. Missouri beats Kansas State 30-27 on a 61-yard field goal at the gun. Really impressive showing by Missouri. Kansas State, I don't know that I'm super down on them, despite the loss. I just thought this was a good game. Anything more on it than that?
No, as a Georgia fan, I can attest that going to Missouri can be difficult sometimes. And yeah, like it's it can be a tricky place. That kick was incredible. I don't know if you saw. Do you follow Josh Pate? You may.
Yes.
He had a great Insta story of it where that kick literally cleared the crossbar by 6 inches.
Right.
Like no more. Like it would have made it not even a foot farther.
Right.
But 61 yarder. Yeah, I think it's the longest in SEC history. I had seen that stat as well, which is, I mean, crazy. So yeah, at the gun, that was really impressive. Missouri, by the way, 3-0. One of the
Yeah.
there's some weird SEC teams that are 3-0. And there's a lot of good teams. The teams that you think are good in the SEC that are not 3-0.
Right. One team that is pretty good in the MAC is Ohio, and they beat Iowa State 10-7. Yeah, Ohio rolling right along. They might win the MAC this year. North Carolina beat Minnesota 31-13. Clash of styles there, and the team with the better quarterback won that one. We'll just say Oregon State beat San Diego State 26-9. Oregon State still rolling right along. Georgia beat South Carolina 24-14. Looked a little shaky, at least in the first half, and then figured it out a little bit in the second half. You're the Georgia fan. Do you have any thoughts on that before we move on?
I'll be honest, I didn't get to watch a ton of it as I was going into the game, going into the Florida Tennessee game, but I did. Yeah, they would show it on the Jumbotron until Georgia got a 2-score lead, and it's Florida, like, right? They're not going to show Georgia highlights when they're leading by a bunch. So then they just quit showing highlights, and so I was kind of just out of it, right? So
Yep.
The offense, by the way, first half offense for Georgia, not good. This is the concern when Todd Monken leaves and goes to be the offensive coordinator for the Ravens. Like, now we have Mike Bobo. It's not the same. Like, I'm a Georgia fan. I can see these things. It is frustrating, but the same with everyone else. Let's give them a little bit of time. Like,
Sure.
Yeah, it's both things are true for me. It's not going to be the same as it was last year, but they also could be better than what they looked in the first half against South Carolina.
Right. Duke beat Northwestern 38-14. Battle of the smart people. Rutgers beat Virginia Tech 35-16. Rutgers is decent, I think, for Rutgers. Virginia Tech is a different story. They are an underdog this week against a G5 team, by the way. Alabama beat USF 17-3. I will say this. This is one of my locks. I had Alabama covering. I will, in my defense, if I had known Jalen Milroe was not playing in this game, there's no way I would have touched this. Tyler Buckner gets the start and looks horrific. Ty Simpson came in and wasn't a whole lot better. And Bama scored like late to make this 17-3. Just a really ugly showing. I think Bama is wasting one of the better defenses they've had in the last several years.
Okay, let's partner both of these takes, right? So the Alabama offense, who adds Tyler Buckner, who started at quarterback, and they also add Tommy Rees. Those guys leave Notre Dame. Sam Hartman goes to Notre Dame, and by the way, like the Notre Dame offensive coordinator, that is what it is. Maybe they didn't get their first choice. Maybe they did. Who knows? But Notre Dame is in a much better spot. Like, Alabama would kill for that kind of offensive setup right now. Like, they clearly don't have it. Buckner was not it. He was 5 of 14 on the day for 34 yards from your starting quarterback. Alabama in total all game. And I know the conditions weren't great. I understand that. Alabama completed 10 passes. 10. That is not very many throws.
They weren't playing Auburn or anything either.
No, right. Like, this is South Florida. This is not. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot here. It wasn't good. Like, Alabama's not good. Is that okay for me to say? They're going up against Ole Miss this week. They've not shown me anything to convince me that they are good. You're not going to be able to. There's nothing that you could tell me from the games that I've seen them play that like they're turning a corner now. Like, now they've got it. We've seen all their quarterbacks, and none of them have been spectacular at all.
I don't know if you saw anything about what Josh Pate said about this game. He thought maybe Milroe was suspended, and he also thought there were a number of players on the team that mailed it in because they weren't real happy about the quarterback situation. I think Milroe takes over the job. The nice thing about having that kind of showing from Buckner and Simpson is you kind of know who the guy is now. Like, it has to be Milroe. I think they can win 10 games with Milroe. They can't beat Georgia with Jalen Milroe. And it's going to be hard to beat LSU. Yeah, like Alabama, they're not going to win the title this year. But I think if they put Milroe back in there, they can probably be a 10-win team. I think that's what I expect to see from them going forward. All right, Iowa beats Western Michigan 41-10. Notable mostly just because of the point thing. I actually think they probably needed more than 41 against Western Michigan. If they want to hit that 25 point per game average and Brian Ferentz keeps his job. Bud Elliott has he has all their games mapped out and the number of points he thinks they need to score against each opponent. He thought they had to score 45 against Western Michigan. So after each week, he adjusts. Okay, now I got to add, since they only scored 41, that's 4 points they didn't score. He now has to add 4 points to somewhere in the rest of their schedule. So I don't know, man. I don't think it's going to happen, but Iowa's still pretty solid team.
I have nothing else. You've said everything. Okay, if Iowa wants to get upset about this, and they are kind of a laughingstock, and people do make fun of them, right? Like us, and we're not the only ones. Like there's a whole thing. It's a movement on Twitter to poke fun at the Iowa offense. But then they did not have to put it out that the coach's son, who's the offensive coordinator, he's not doing a good job. Like they're not scoring many points. They put out a point requirement for this guy that he has to score 25 points per game or he gets fired. Like you can have that requirement, but don't make it public. Don't let anyone know. Like that's you brought it on yourself, I guess is all I have to say to the Hawkeye fans. Like that's kind of on you guys.
I did hear the idea today that if they win their division, it might actually hurt him because then they have to play Ohio State, Penn State, or Michigan, and that will drop the average.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have much else. Who knows? Maybe they don't score 25 points a game and they keep him anyway, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like maybe they get to the end and be like, we're just voiding the contract. No big deal.
Technically, that's what it is. It just voids the contract if he doesn't get it. But technically, they could give him another contract. So,
yeah,
I don't know. Anyway, someone that's more fun to watch than that is Washington, and they absolutely hammered Michigan State 41-7. We were both all over that one. Never a doubt there. Michael Penix, that guy might end up in New York for a Heisman ceremony this year, and 3 of his receivers might be playing on Sundays. They're really good. They are spectacular, honestly. Any more thoughts on Washington?
Washington is a playoff team. Like through 3 weeks, what we've seen, Washington's they're a playoff team right now. That offense is, you mentioned 3 NFL wide receivers, NFL quarterback, combined with a really cool system. Second year in the system, by the way, for all of those guys. So that means experience. That means, they have reps pretty much, I guess, is what that means. But something to look for them going forward. You can't just have a good batch of receivers and a good quarterback. Tennessee tried that last year, right? You need to have look for a little bit of offensive line play, and they don't have to be great on defense. I'm not asking them to be great on defense. But just look for something, just some consistency. Maybe they have a nose for the football. Maybe they get a few sacks. Maybe they tip ball interceptions. You need something from your defense. You need to be it has to complement your offense. It's a really, really good Pac-12 this year. They're going to get tested. Like we'll know about these teams out there in the Pac-12, and there's a bunch of good ones, but they all have to play each other. So that's the fun thing about it. But man, through 3 weeks, no one's looked better than those guys. Like they've looked as good as anyone.
Yep. Someone that has not looked good this year is Oklahoma State. They lose to South Alabama 33-7. Very disappointing for their season. No reason to dwell on that. Anyway, Syracuse beats Purdue 35-20. Backyard brawl. West Virginia beats Pitt 17-6. This game was literally a brawl. I mean, there was chippiness and there was mostly just defense, and Phil Jurkovec was being booed incessantly by the Pitt fans, and was strangely unavailable to the media after the game.
Did you watch this game?
I watched a good chunk of it. Yeah. We were kind of feeling optimistic-ish about West Virginia in the preview for this.
Right.
Neil Brown might have saved his job. I also think Pitt is just kind of, their offense at least is terrible. Pat Narduzzi, he didn't like how good their offense was passing the ball a few years ago, and this is the result of that. I think maybe he enjoyed scoring 6 points.
You have to let it go with Narduzzi. You have a little rivalry with him. To your point about West Virginia, they've played 3 games. I know that they lost week 1 to Penn State, but they have looked good in all 3 games. They have they've surpassed what we thought they would look like. I mean, we were expecting to start out, like 1-4, 1-5 potentially, going into that Houston game after, you lose to Texas Tech and TCU. That's their next 2 games. We thought they'd lose a lot of these. No, like they're 2-1, and there's winnable games on there. Like they have wins left on that schedule. Yeah, like we were talking like, is Neil Brown going to be the first guy fired? That we were just disrespectful. Like that was just wrong. They have clearly rallied behind him. They're competitive. That's a competitive football team. Good for them. That's all I have to say. We were wrong. Yeah, I'll just go ahead and put my hand up first. We missed it on that one. They've got a competitive football team, and they're going to win more games this year.
They might get Dana Holgorsen fired after the Houston game, by the way.
Fair point.
BYU upsets Arkansas 38-31. Didn't get a lot of eyes in this game. Arkansas was up most of the game, I believe, and BYU comes back. Ole Miss beats Georgia Tech 48-23. A little bit tighter than that until the fourth quarter, and then Ole Miss kind of put it away. Texas beats Wyoming 31-10, kind of deceiving. This was like 10-10 in the second half, and Texas finally in the fourth quarter decided to stop messing around. Clear letdown spot for them. TCU beat Houston 36-13. Colorado beat Colorado State 43-35. Listen to any other podcast if you want to hear way too much about that. Fresno State beat Arizona State 29-0. Arizona State has some serious injury issues right now, and they do not look very good. Anything else on week 3 before we move on?
Let's move on. Week 4 is still
right.
loaded. We need to go on.